a quick look at our agenda for today. First and foremost, of course, we're going to talk about our goals. So, you know, the middle of March hit ACTFL and LTI very hard, just like it hit everybody pretty hard, right? So we will go over exactly what the goals were when we set out to tackle this obstacle and what has been accomplished thus far. We will also give a brief overview of all ACTFL assessments. Of course, our main focus today, as you've probably already gathered, is going to be the AAPPL. That is the most commonly used ACTFL assessment within the K through 12 circles, but we will also cover a couple other options that are available for our students who are seeking the Seal of Biliteracy. We will then go ahead and dive into our at-home proctoring methods during this time. We are fortunate enough to speak to a few different methods that we have. A couple of those are going to be computer proctoring, and our main focus today will be on the parent-guardian proctoring solution that we offer. We'll then go ahead and dive right into our panel discussion. We'll have a series of questions for each of our three wonderful panelists. And then, of course, we will have an opportunity for you to share your success. I'll dive into details there. We'll cross that bridge once we get to it. And then, of course, as promised, our Q&A session for our attendees to be able to post their questions and comments for either me or the panelists to address. First and foremost, our goals. Number one, of course, offer flexible solutions while maintaining the security of ACTFL assessments. Again, ACTFL and LTI, when the pandemic hit, came together to not only figure out the best solutions to address the at-home assessment situation that we are facing, but also to be able to provide more than just one option, right? So it's important to us to be able to, number two, accommodate learners and educators during this challenging time. Then moving to number three, it's also important to provide equity and fairness to learners. Additionally, demonstrate continued commitment to the Seal of Biliteracy principles that are so important to teachers, educators, as well as students, and to provide structured continuity for measuring learners' language growth. Just a quick overview of our ACTFL assessments. Of course, at the top of the page, we've got our AAPPL. It is currently available in 13 languages. We are very excited to add a 14th language this fall, which is going to be American Sign Language. We also offer an assessment for students to earn the Seal of Biliteracy in Latin. That is called the ALIRA. And new this year is a bundled OPI and WPT that ACTFL has rolled out in order to make testing in less commonly taught and tested languages affordable and accessible to our students who are earning the Seal of Biliteracy. So what we have here are 22 additional languages for which speaking / listening and writing assessments are offered for our students who are looking to earn that heralded seal. In addition, of course, the ever reliable ACTFL OPI, the standard OPI, I should say, which is available in over 120 languages, believe it or not. Very quickly, the AAPPL, for those of us who are not already familiar with it, it is a 4-skill online assessment. A unique feature of this assessment is the fact that it does cover all 3 modes of communication, including interpersonal listening and speaking. It is an HTML5 based assessment. What that means is it can be delivered on any device. That includes desktops, laptops, including Chromebooks, and even tablets. That functionality is new as of last year and comes in quite handy at this point where we have students testing from home on who knows what kind of device, right? Each of the 4 sections is A, about 30 minutes each, and B, completely independent of one another. So of course, the Seal of Biliteracy, we're typically testing across all modes of communication, all 4 skills. But in some cases where we're measuring the growth of our students, sometimes it's nice to kind of collect that baseline data in maybe 1 skill, maybe 2 skills, and kind of piece together our students' proficiency as we lead them along that road. Of course, all the prompts are modern, relevant, technology-based contexts. All of the content of the AAPPL, of course, is developed by ACTFL. And here we are, the at-home testing options. As mentioned before, we do have remote proctoring. Remote proctoring is something that has always been offered for the ACTFL OPI, OPIC, WPT, etc. New this year, we do have the computer-based proctoring for the AAPPL and ALIRA, and then of course the parent/guardian proctoring option. I will go ahead and highlight that the parent-guardian proctoring option is free of charge. We will get into the details there here momentarily. The computer-based proctoring is available for a $4 fee, and that is, of course, either for the full AAPPL, so all 4 skills, or again, if we're piecing together just one section or 2 sections, the same applies. First, I'll speak briefly to the computer proctoring. This is available for students who are 13 years and older, based on, in order to be COPA compliant, of course. It does take into focus the student's privacy and safeguards the integrity of the testing process. It is compatible with Chromebooks, desktop, laptop computers, and once again, it is $4 per student. It was available as of April 20th. Our main focus today, once again, is going to be the parent-guardian AAPPL proctoring process. So of course, this does highlight another amazing feature of the AAPPL in that the 2020 AAPPL content is 100% brand new this year. So this provides ACTFL and LTI with the option to provide an accessible option like the parent-guardian proctoring option with security guidelines in place, of course, and offer that with the 2019 AAPPL content that will be sunset after this year, of course. It is, of course, available on all devices, as is the AAPPL, right? So, including Chromebooks, even tablets. And the instructions that we will be discussing a little bit later are available for our parents and guardians. And we have now surpassed 20 languages, and we are taking requests for further languages week by week as our educators request them for parents who prefer to read these instructions and proctor this assessment for their students and may not be as comfortable in their English. An additional feature that we have is going to be the customer support hours. This is something that I'm very excited to highlight. We do realize that, with parents and guardians proctoring these assessments, it may not be their #1 priority. They may have 1 or 2 other things going on at home at this point. So we are offering extended customer support hours beyond just the 8 to 6. So on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we are keeping our support team open until 10 p.m. And then, of course, looking at weekends on Saturdays and Sundays, we have our customer support ready to take calls and emails on Saturday and Sunday between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. And finally, I will stop blabbing on. We'll get to our panelists. Again, we have Emily Huff, Nicole Hanlon, and Karina Bolter today. What we are going to do is we are going to have them answer a series of questions for us, really to highlight their experiences. They, like many others, have gone through the experience of, the at-home AAPPL, so to speak, over the past month. And they, again, have been kind enough to volunteer their time to highlight this new proctoring solution for us and to make it easier, hopefully, on the rest of us who are going to be doing it this week and in weeks to come. So for the first question for our panelists is going to be, why did you choose to go with the parent-guardian proctoring option as opposed to the computer-based proctoring, remote proctoring that may have been available? We'll go ahead and start with Emily.
Okay. We kind of discussed in depth both of them, and we were really, both of them were on the table, and we thought about doing both of them. But we ended up settling on the at-home option just because we weren't sure what kind of an environment the kids were going to be in and how many distractions they were going to get during the test, and with little brothers and sisters and dogs and I don't know, whatever else they have going on. And we knew that the computer proctored one was going to monitor like their like vision, their field of vision and like different things like that. But we just felt with so many possible distractions at home that it was just easier to have a human adult kind of do that proctoring than the technology. So we decided just for the kids, it would be easier to do that parent proctored.
Great. Nicole?
We also looked at both options, and as a department, we ended up going with the home because first we couldn't really collect the extra fee, and our district students opt in and have to pay to take the test themselves, so it's not district covered, so we didn't really have a way to finance that. And also by doing the at-home version, we thought that it would be more accessible for students on different platforms, different types of devices, that kind of thing. And we didn't know how difficult it would be to push out that software or the instructions on how to make the computer proctoring work when we weren't around to troubleshoot. So students are already familiar with the testing interface as it works normally because we've done the practice in class before distance learning. And so we just thought that would be something they would be the most comfortable with.
I was on mute. So thank you, Nicole. And you, Karina?
Very similar to what Emily and Nicole both said, we decided to go with the at-home proctoring because one, our students also opt in to take the test and have to pay, so we didn't have a way to collect those fees. Also, when we were mobilizing to start the testing, the virtual proctoring was not yet available, and we didn't want to wait much longer to make sure it was going to work properly. And then finally, it was also a matter of comfort. We figured that the at-home proctoring was going to be most similar to what we had already experienced when it comes to proctoring the AAPPL assessment. So we figured if parents had trouble, we would be available to help troubleshoot because we've probably been through it before. Wonderful.
All right, we'll move on to the next question. What resources did you use for guidance as you made your way through the process? And by this, of course, I mean looking at it from the teacher and administrator point of view, not yet from the parent and guardian point of view. I'll go ahead and move on to the next slide as we begin again. Emily, you're up.
So I for the students kind of created a little Q&A, like frequent, like things that I anticipated they asked me. Some of it was just generally like, how do I do this on the test? And some of it was very specific, like what's the best way to prepare? So I made them a little guide. It's like a Google slide they could go through. But for the most part, we just used the information on the testing website. And then pasted in like some specific content about like how to use their computers and who to contact if you have problems, with our local phone numbers and things like that. And the parents received, like, I would say probably 2-page document, very similar to what you can find on the website. We just went through and added in a couple of very specific things for the kids' computers and devices and programs, and then deadlines and dates specific to our district. But we really just used the FAQ guides that you can find online and thought that they were pretty helpful to the parents.
Fantastic. And as far as the ordering process goes, so taking your student roster, your student list, and converting that into AAPPL orders, how exactly did that process look?
I'll defer to Nicole or Karina. I don't do the ordering for my district. My instructional coach does that part. So okay. I defer to the
Sounds good.
For me, I really liked the guides that were provided, the PDF guides. I know when I'm communicating with the parents, I used a lot of that language and copy pasted it into emails or whatever, and then linked some of those documents specifically. When it comes to ordering the test, the easiest thing for me to do is go into our LMS. So we use PowerSchool, a report with my students' names, ID numbers, that kind of thing, so I can copy paste them over into the test ordering Excel sheet. The only thing I have to end up doing is manually typing their names because Power School exports it as one. I need 2 columns. But other than that, just, I mean, ordering worked the same as every other time I've done it, only clicking the at-home box. What else? I think the documents on the website were really good. We just kind of took those and reformatted some of them and repackaged them with some district information. As far as preparing students for the test, I also used some Google Slides, put some practice up on Schoology, that kind of thing. We did the demo testing and things like that before, all of that before COVID, because we were actually planning on implementing the test early April, and then put it on hold until May, trying to see if we were going to go back to school. But we were gearing up to take the test soon when we went on distant learning. So that was preparation we had already done.
Great. Karina?
Very similar. There's a wealth of resources available on the LTI site. Lots of like the FAQs, and then the parent resource guides, the demo test, the list of tasks and topics, the score descriptors, lots of information there. And then more specific to this context, the guides for parents were very useful. When it comes to registering, I actually had my students fill out a Google form, and then I was able to copy and paste some of their information, like their student ID, their name, and everything. I was able to copy and paste that into the Excel sheet. And one thing I really like about it is that you can register as many kids as you want, and you only pay for the ones that the tests that the kids actually complete. So I could register kids that I wasn't sure if they were going to actually be doing the at-home proctoring, because about a third to a half of our students decided not to do it. And so I can just simply cancel their test, no penalty.
Yeah, that's great. That is another unique feature, whether it's the full assessment, right, all 4 skills, or just one of those sections. If a student doesn't show up, or for whatever reason decides that that he or she does not want to take that assessment, yeah, the Apple is only ever charged for after the assessment has been taken and those ratings have been received, which of course, again, given the circumstances, comes in even more handy. As we mentioned, there is the teacher admin guide to out of school testing. It is quite the document. It goes into a lot of detail as far as, for each of these assessments, how to order, how to choose each of the at-home options. And of course, it can be modified, as I believe all 3 of our panelists have mentioned. You download it, you edit, you add, you delete in order to custom tailor to your parents, guardians, and your students. ACTFL has also come out with some wonderful videos. They are on the ACTFL YouTube channel. They're also available via these links. You'll see the part 1, part 2 links down there. There are 2 separate videos. One is for preparing for testing, and the other is for during and after testing. And those are, of course, public access. Those can be shared across colleagues, across parents as well. Very quickly, there are resources available for the online proctoring as well. That same teacher admin guide to out of school testing is right there for you. There's also a computer proctoring guide for students. So in this case, there's no required parent or guardian involvement. So in this case, the guidelines, the instructional videos are directed straight at the students because it is on them to open up the program, access the assessment, and go ahead and administer the assessment. There are videos for this as well. These are on the LTI YouTube channel and available once again following these links. This whole presentation will be made available to everyone attending today, so you can follow those links in your own time. On to the third question for our panelists. How did you get testing information to parents and guardians? Let's see, we are starting with Karina.
So I drafted a letter. I modified some of the information that ACTFL and LTI provided, but I sent out a letter to the teachers who would be having students testing, and those teachers then either chose to post the information on their Google Classrooms, or I think a lot of them emailed the parents to share that information. And then also I put together a website with the information that I thought was most essential with links to LTI's site so that parents could get additional information if they needed. But I wanted to have the most essential information all in one location so that parents could find it quickly and easily. So I have links to the proctoring guide, the demo test, the lists of tasks and topics, tech support, things like that. And yeah, that's about it.
Great, thank you, Karina. We'll move on to Emily.
Yeah, so we had prior to the school shutdown, we had a 2-week window where kids could decide whether or not they wanted to take the test, and 1 week of that happened, and then all of a sudden the closure happened. So we had this sort of hangover where I was not sure who was committed to taking the test, who had paid to take the test. Our students have to pay also. So we had to wrangle up just to find out who was interested so we knew who to continue to communicate with. So I just was emailing and sending out forms and messages, Google Forms, to people to try to get committed people. And then once we had those numbers, we just through email and Google Classroom and stuff, sending information to the students, but also the parents. And I will say, like, for the parents, I think they were just getting overwhelmed with emails at the time because several of them we had to end up calling. And they're like, oh, I just can't read any more emails from the school. And I'm like, you're going to need to check your email because we're going to be sending some stuff out about the test. So yeah, we had once we knew who wanted to take the test, we started to get them some testing tips and kind of explain how it was going to work. I guess that's that. And then down in the bottom is my Google slide I made for the kids, which had a lot of the information about what you should do as a student and what you could do to prepare.
Great, thank you, Emily, and we'll move on to Nicole.
For us, we actually have our students opt in at the beginning of the school year in August. I send home a letter explaining how it's going to work, when it's going to happen. At my district, at least for the French students, Spanish is a little different sometimes, but for French students in level 3 and 4, if they take the APPL, they can elect to have their results converted and count as our final semester 2 exam as like an additional motivator to get them to take it. So I kind of knew who was already doing the test versus who had decided to take the alternate project that we offer. After that, I just communicated with them both via email. I sent you see the email on the left there, just with basic information and links to all of the documents we just talked about. And also by posting review material and resources and a lot of the links to important Apple websites on Schoology, which is our other union site. But that's pretty much it. So we've been communicating mostly via email, also by Remind, being like, hey, we gave our students a 2-week window to take the test up through this past Friday, the 15th. And so today, for example, I've been using Remind and email to be like, hey, it looks like you haven't started it yet, see where they're at. But that's pretty much it so far.
That's great, yeah. And another way to kind of keep track of those APPL assessments that have been ordered, the ones that have been taken, the ones that have ratings pending. This is actually new as of this year as well, right on the home page, right? We have that little bar chart where we can break it down by language. If we're at the district level, we can break it down by school and see, exactly how many of those assessments have been ordered. Let's say my school has ordered 50, 42 of them have been taken, ratings received. We've got 2 of them that are awaiting those, the ACTFL certified raters. to rate them, so we can kind of keep a bird's eye view on testing activity throughout the school, throughout the district that way. All right, we'll go ahead and move on to the next question. What feedback did you hear from parents, guardians, and students? We'll go ahead and start with Karina for this one.
So first, a lot of parents and students expressed appreciation that it was an opportunity still to have the at-home proctoring. So really that was mostly what we heard. We haven't heard any complaints or any issues. There were no troubleshooting issues that came up that were brought to my attention, at least. I asked the other teachers who had students, and they all said that everything went real smoothly. So there were no issues. The kids just said that, the speaking was the most difficult, but that's what we always hear, and that's natural for the learning progression.
All right, thanks, Nicole.
I've gotten a couple panicked text remind messages or email messages from students or parents being like, I use an Apple computer and someone sent me a text message and it popped up on my screen and it logged me out. What do I do? And then a few minutes later, I logged back in and I'm fine. And I'm like, okay, great. So I've gotten a couple quick messages like that, like I've been logged out of my test. And even though you tell them, okay, well then just log back in, you still get a couple messages of them being like, is that okay? Because I tell them that if they get logged out repeatedly, that their test will get flagged, but they miss the repeatedly part. So I'll have, they'll get bumped out for one, our internet went down or something and I got logged out of the test, and then they're fine. Other than that, my students are really happy that we offered the test, especially my graduating seniors, with so much up in the air. They've been working towards trying to qualify for the Seal for 4 years. And there was a period where it was like, is this going to happen? I don't know. And I think they were really sad to not get the opportunity to test after all of that work preparing. So a lot of the students and everyone were very thankful that was being offered. But that's really the feedback, is that they're just happy to have the chance to take it and do it. And honestly, as far as distance learning is concerned, it's relatively an easy assignment to implement as my lesson, because they know what it is and there's no new learning curve for them to find the interface. So they were kind of like, okay, cool, these 2 weeks I just get to take the test. That'll be really nice.
That's so nice to hear. And as far as the security features go, just to kind of explain that quickly, whether the Apple is being taken, at school, in a classroom, or at home, there are security features built in, right? So if a student tries to click away from the testing window, the test will shut down. If the student tries to right click or copy and paste or anything like that, simply won't happen. Apps like Google Translate are automatically shut down, right, for obvious reasons. So we do have those kind of, the built-in functionality as far as security goes, and that is outlined in the, parent guardian proctoring guidelines. Okay, Emily, what feedback have you heard?
Yeah, a lot of what Nicole already said. There's a lot of gratefulness. I actually think that the night that we heard that schools were going to be closing for a while, I got 3 messages from students about, what does this mean for the Apple test? And I was like, oh, you guys got to give me more than 10 minutes here. So when I got the information from LTI that the Apple was still going to be available, and we waited a while in case we ended up getting back in school. But then when it looked like that wasn't going to be the option, I was like, thank goodness that we have this opportunity from Apple. And they were so grateful. And the parents, I was, because I was like, okay, we're going to have to do this all through email. You're going to have to get us $20 somehow. We're going to have to, you're going to have to sign this form and get it back to us. And they just like bent over backwards and were so grateful and happy that we were doing this for their kids. The senior parents were just very, very appreciative and grateful. So yeah, that was the big thing. And then the night of testing, a couple times, we would get those frantic messages from parents and students about different things. And like every single time we were like, did you read the PDF that outlines and then, oh no, I haven't read that. And we're like, okay, sit down. And this is parents too. We just had to remind them to make sure you just follow the directions and go through it. And then they're like, wow, once I read the directions, everything was easy. I was like, yeah. So that was it was a very easy process and very happy people going into it.
Awesome. Something else I have enjoyed hearing about is parent and guardian feedback regarding what their students are doing, right? So the students are sitting down, they've got their headphones on, they've got their microphones. But if I'm a parent guardian, I've never seen the Apple administered before. I might have heard about it from, my child, but I've certainly never watched a child take the assessment. So did any of the three of you hear feedback like that from parents, guardians who, had something to say about, their students speaking in that language, or so on and so forth?
I had a few a mother contact me just last week, and she was like, she's like, I would ask him all the time like to speak to me, and he never would do it. And she's like, and she's like, and I didn't want to interfere with his test or anything, but she's like, I kept just thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm so proud of you, like listening to him. She's like, I've never heard him talk before in another language, and he was just doing this test. And she's like, I had to really calm myself down and not get too excited because I didn't want to disrupt his test, because my job was just to sit there and listen. But I just found myself so excited. And she's like, that was really cool. And I was like, yeah, well, I hear it, So that was nice.
That's awesome. Okay, and our final question here, and then we'll go ahead and start addressing our attendees' questions. How do students' ratings look? Are they what you had expected? So I believe on our panel, let's see, we have 2 years experience with the Apple, 3 years experience with the Apple, and then 5 years experience with the Apple. So of course, with that kind of experience with an assessment, we do of course, students are going to be different every year, but if we start looking at Seal of Biliteracy testing, we do have, expectations / hopes as far as, where each of those 4 skills, where those levels of proficiency will be. So this year, as compared to years past, how did those ratings look? And of course, as the background here, we have a sample of that score report that is provided for each student, which highlights not only the score that he or she received in each of the skills, but also a brief score description based on the actual can-do statements, of course. And then my favorite column, which is strategy, right? So student received, intermediate mid. What can I be doing as an educator, as a parent guardian, to make sure that, my student moves up to maybe intermediate high next time he or she takes the assessment. Nicole, would you like to address this first?
Yes. Sorry if you can hear my baby screaming upstairs. I apologize. Good. Okay.
That's the new normal these days.
Really unhappy right now. It's that time.
Right.
Anyway, as far as we're concerned, I think for the most part, I mean, where their speaking scores are probably the lowest, and then writing, because obviously output as far as where they are developmentally in their language acquisition, like that's to be expected. I had a couple students that I was a little surprised by their scores, so I am going to have a couple of their scores looked at just to make sure that I'm, that they are what they are correct, because I know there is some, there is a human factor in the rating. But for the most part, I'm pretty, I'm pleased or just not surprised by the way that certain students are scoring. The students who never speak ever in class obviously are scoring pretty low. And then the ones who are pretty conversational seemed to score pretty well. So I think, globally, I mean, I'm
Great. Yeah, so I mean, both those speaking and writing samples are reviewed by, live actual certified raters. So there is that element there. And there is the option to listen to what each of those students said, right? If I'm the teacher, if I'm the administrator on the account, and I see whether a score is something I had expected or not, I can go in and review those speaking samples, listen to myself, look at the rating, see if it aligns with what I think. Same thing with the writing samples, right? I can go into my Apple account and read through exactly what the student wrote for each of those prompts. In any case where I think that the student has done better or worse, maybe, than what his or her score indicates, I can submit very easily what is called a ratings review, right? So in that case, at least one other ACTFL certified rater is going to be reviewing that speaking or writing sample. And of course, that's a very important part of the norming process, right? So if it is found by that second blind rater or third blind rater that that is the accurate rating, then it stays. If not, then it is readily changed. Right? Okay, Emily, how did your scores look? Your student
Yeah,
scores, I should say.
my second year, last year there were low scores kind of all throughout, but writing was really low. So we really focused all year on improving different aspects of our writing and talking about how you would level up and get to a higher level of proficiency. I just wanted to build them some buffer area in their skills. So I just kept, working on different strategies to get higher in their proficiency with that. So I was really, really happy. It turned out we must have did good work. Our writing scores, were better than last year. So I feel like, that was good. And I feel like our huge weak area is definitely the speaking. It was kind of across the board, the dip for everybody. It was really low compared to last year and just compared to where I kind of thought they would be. But I feel like without a lot of structure and everything going into it, that's expected to be the low one. So that was our low one.
Great, thank you. And Karina?
I would say the scores looked very consistent with what we've seen in previous years. Again, we test in level 4, so we've been testing in level 4 the last several years. And yeah, it's about what we typically see. I asked the other teachers from the department to look at their specific student scores, and they said, yeah, that seems about where I would expect those students to be. So it was good to see that consistency. Also, looking at the speaking, they're slightly lower than the writing, which is normal. So it was good to see that because I figured the speaking would be the hardest part to cheat on. And so if it's that, that difference that we would expect to see, then I feel like that speaks to the test integrity a little bit too.
Sure. And given that it is that simulated live chat, I would imagine that, even if I had a million resources all over the place, it would be, it's 18 prompts back and forth, right? So I'm, being asked questions, I'm answering those questions, I'm being asked to ask questions back. So we do have that, that security there as well, right? And of course, before we get into our Q&A, very quickly, some of you may remember, just based on social media and posts that came up last year, LTI is doing a Share Your Success story. So these images on the right did come from that Share Your Success campaign. Once again, it's a unique situation this year. So I do feel, I personally have seen a surge in, just kind of on the outside looking in, looking at Twitter, looking at Facebook, and seeing so many encouraging, we set a new record with Seal of Biliteracy, kids who learn the Seal of Biliteracy, so on and so forth. So we are running a campaign in which we are asking, and I will go ahead and again post, let's see. We've got the link right there. And if you can't follow that link, it will be available on Apple Central, of course, where everything Apple is. That's www.applecentral.com. But anyway, what we're doing there is you fill out a quick form. You post a picture or pictures of your students or just one of your students. And what you're able to do is you're entered in a drawing of, I believe it's 5. Yes, it's going to be 5 $100 gift cards in order to not only share your student story, but also help out for the cause. We'll go ahead and move to questions. Unless any of our panelists have anything additional to say, we'll go ahead and move on to those questions and open up the forum here. And anything else? Emily's good. Karina, all set. Okay, I've been keeping an eye on these questions. We've got some good ones. I'm hoping that we'll have enough time, but I guess we shall see. So we've got one that's specific to Nicole. And before I dive into this, once again, if you do have a question, please go ahead and post it in the questions section on the toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen, and we can address them one by one. So this one is specifically for Nicole. Nicole, you mentioned a 2-week window for taking the test. How long does it actually take for a student to take the test? Did you assign other work during the 2-week window?
No, our district gave us guidelines that we were supposed to be assigning module. They called them, sorry, my computer moved. They called them modules. So, and they really wanted us to back off how much work we were assigning students. So not a typical in-class amount of work. So they said they wanted, I think, 4 or 5 classes worth of work for the students over that 2-week period. So it was a reduced workload. So for my students, what I did is I made our 3rd module at the beginning of May, just taking, because I didn't want them to feel like they needed to rush through taking the test in order to complete all these other assignments that I wanted them to do. So it was their only assignment from May 1st through 15th. So they could test in any order. I also wanted to give them the time, if they wanted to use that time, maybe that first week they wanted to spend reviewing and going over our practice activities on Schoology and then testing the second week, that kind of thing. So if they were taking the test, they had that whole window from the 1st to the 15th to review, ask me questions, do the demo test, take the test, that kind of thing. If they were not taking the test, they were one of the students that decided they did to opt out, they used that 2-week period to do an alternative project based on the unit of study that we had just wrapped up. So I hope that answers your question.
Interesting. Thanks, Nicole. Emily, Karina, any comments on that question for you as well?
No, I like, we kind of opened it up. They had a week to take it, or like, we're take it sometime this week, and then I believe that once you begin testing, you get 48 hours to finish it all. Is that correct?
That was the initial rule, but that has opened up because of so many different testing scenarios. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, great. Let's see. Would the home proctoring only apply to this year? Could I register my juniors for the Apple test for free of charge too? So just to clarify, the proctoring solution is free of charge. That is not to say that the assessment itself is free of charge. So just to kind of clarify that. As far as these at-home proctoring options go, looking forward, upon the hopefully eventual return to normalcy, and hopefully we're all back in the classroom in the fall, right? It is certainly something that's under consideration with the success that educators have had administering the assessment at home, and the convenience that it adds to kind of bringing the Apple to our students and bringing the Seal of Biliteracy to students who otherwise may not have the opportunity. It is certainly something under consideration. What is most likely is going to be the computer proctored option moving forward, to be available for the Apple. The parent guardian, that's kind of TBD at this point. Okay, what score does a student need to have on the Apple to be awarded the Ohio Seal of Biliteracy? I'll go ahead and let the panel take this.
It's an I5 across or higher across the board. So you get in all 4 modes of communication. So I5 or an A1.
Right, and I'm gonna go ahead and go back to this slide. If we look all the way over to the left, we can take a look at the scale on which the Apple is rated, of course. So looking at I5, that is going to be intermediate high. And as Nicole mentioned, yes, that is across all 4 skills, all 3 modes of communication. So looking at this sample score report, we're a little bit short, but if we're testing juniors, hopefully by senior year, we will have those levels of proficiency that are high enough to earn that Ohio Seal of Biliteracy.
And it has to be within 15 months of graduation. So if you have sophomore or freshman taking the Apple, that's just practice. So it needs to be within 15 months. So they could test spring of junior year. But I had some sophomores taking it in French 3 that no, it's just practice. It's not, that won't qualify them.
Also very good to know. And that is going to be state by state specific, right? So something that applies to Ohio may not apply to Iowa, so on and so forth. What does apply to everyone is the fact that these Apple ratings are valid for 2 years. So if I do live in a state where those rules aren't quite as strict, then I could earn the Seal of Biliteracy based on those kind of combined scores, right? Okay, let's see. Another question, looks like this one is also for the full panel. Are parents watching the student during the whole test? How do you prevent students from using their cell phones and online translators? I'll address the second part. So, there is that built-in security feature of the Apple that prevents them from, clicking on, into another tab. Online translators are shut down. They can't right-click or copy and paste. As far as the first part of the question, are parents watching the student during the whole test? What indication did you all receive? We'll start with Karina this time, as far as exactly what those parents and guardians are doing throughout the test.
Well, I didn't really receive any feedback on how it actually went down, but the expectation that was communicated to the parents was that they needed to be watching the students throughout the test, making sure that they weren't using any additional resources, whether that be a cell phone or anything else. So it's kind of an honor code system. You hope that the parents abide by that.
Great. I'm seeing a lot of head nods. Same for you, Emily?
Yep. The parents filled out a pretty specific proctor form that said these are the things that are not allowed and you have to watch for that. And then they signed their name saying that they will do that. And I would say the anecdotal conversations that I had with parents, they definitely made sure there were no extra devices, just the computer. And then I feel like the computer kind of limits shenanigans. So they were like, I'm just kind of sitting next to them on the couch while they're doing it, or I'm making dinner and they're sitting at the table in front of me. So they were always like kind of in the same room together, but they don't have to, in my opinion, like sit next to them and look over their shoulder the whole time. Just as long as they make sure they're not doing any of the things that are specifically laid out in the proctoring agreement.
Yeah, we as a district made a Google form that linked Apple provides a proctoring agreement for the parents. And I linked that to the Google form and then also had parents provide their contact information as well. And students were required to have their parents fill the form in order to receive their login information. Once they turned it in, I sent the login information out. Could a student have cheated and filled in that information for their parent? Yes. It is on the honor code, but we at least made sure that we were collecting something from them that the parent said that they had seen that document.
Great. Moving on to the next question. Are students able to test in more than one language if they are trilingual? Have any of the three of you had students take the Apple in more than one language?
Yes, we've had a number of students who study multiple languages. And so, yeah, they test in, I think the most we've seen is 2 languages, but we've had a number of students who have done that.
We had students do that too. We have especially students who speak a different language at home. Some students will study more than one language, or if you speak another language at home, we've had students test that way. We had a student who did the Rotary exchange last year, and so she was not enrolled in French this year because she spent last year in France. So she's taking Spanish, but tested in French as well. So yeah,
wonderful.
But yeah.
Yeah, so the answer to that question is a resounding yes, right? Whether both of those languages are Apple languages or what we've seen quite a few times is, one is an Apple language, Spanish, French, German, whatever it may be. And another is a language that's offered for that less commonly taught languages offering, the OPI-WPT bundle. So, you know, Gujarati, Dari, Pashto, whatever it may be. So students, yes, they absolutely can earn that, so to speak, double seal of biliteracy, which is so cool and makes me very jealous. But anyway, if a student scored low on one section, did you or will you allow them to retake it? We'll go ahead and start with Nicole on this one.
I have allowed students to retake a section if they're graduating seniors, and it's, you know, if they get an I4 and they really feel they could do better. I have allowed them to retake that before but if they're not graduating, if they're a junior or a sophomore, I don't allow that, because in that case you have a whole nother academic year. But if it's down to the wire and you know, and then there's one thing that stands between you and the seal, yes, I will allow a student to retest.
Great. Emily, I see another head nod.
Yeah, we, for those seniors did like a round of retakes if they thought they could improve, and just tried to do that with the time, you know, as quickly as possible. And they had to find $5 and run it by somebody's house and get that paid for. And yeah, so we, for the seniors, I had a few juniors take it this year, and I just said, you know, next year is your year to retake that. So we'll do that next year, or we'll take it again next year. But yeah, seniors definitely retake.
Karina?
Same, you know, if it's a senior, then yes, I'll allow a retake. They don't typically ask for it. We don't get a lot of seniors in our level 4 classes. So usually if they're in there, they haven't really built the proficiency needed. Like a retake probably wouldn't benefit them. But sometimes seniors will, who have tried multiple times on a retake, like their senior year, we offer multiple opportunities for retakes. Even then, sometimes they still don't get it. Most of them are also taking AP and can also get it through the AP test.
Great, and there's a follow-up question on whether or not students can, you know, retake just one section. So we'll go ahead and go back to the score report, right, which highlights each of the 4 sections. So if I have a student who has, you know, hit that intermediate high across interpersonal listening and speaking, interpretive reading, interpretive listening, but who has fallen just short of, you know, that intermediate high in presentational writing, yes, I can have him or her just retake that one section. As Emily mentioned, you know, it's $5. They pay to retake it, and then of course, you know, that writing sample goes through that same rating process, and they're essentially re-rated. We all have bad days, right? So it's kind of, you know, that policy is there to be able to really account for those seniors who, you know, may not have another opportunity to earn that seal of biliteracy. Unfortunately, we are out of time. I could go all night doing this, as I'm sure a lot of you could as well. I would like to go ahead and take this opportunity to give the most heartfelt thank you to all 3 of our panelists, Karina, Emily, Nicole. Thank you so much. This was not only very useful to me, that is much less important than how useful it was to our attendees. I'm seeing not only a lot of questions in our question board, but a lot of feedback with a lot of thank yous. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to apply it to my students, my program. So once again, thank you so much. And I will keep my fingers so very tightly crossed that I will see everyone at Central States next year. My goodness, I miss these language conferences so much. I'm a little embarrassed as to how much I miss them, as I'm sure everybody's kind of on the same page with me there. But hopefully what we were able to do today is bring a little taste of you know, the Central States Conference to you. We're very thankful to the Central States executives who gave us this opportunity to share these wonderful resources from our panelists. And we look forward to, again, moving forward and you know, looking at new horizons. So Karina, Emily, Nicole, thank you so much. We've got all of our contact information there. So if you have any kind of follow-up questions, you can most certainly reach out to any of the 4 of us. We will be emailing everybody who is in attendance today with a follow-up recording of the webinar. I believe Central Students will also be posting a recording of the webinar on Twitter, Facebook, maybe even, what's that new one that everybody uses these days? TikTok? Yeah, I don't even know what that does, but anyway. Thanks again. Have a wonderful evening, and we appreciate you joining us tonight.
Thank you.